Welcome to this new PSD to Bootstrap course. Now by the end of these lectures you'll be able to take what you need from any Photoshop design and recreate a new fully responsive landing page in the Bootstrap framework using HTML, CSS and JavaScript. We will work our way through the lectures and build each section to match our PSD file until we have completed our new landing page that can be used for either an app, a portfolio or a product marketing page. So this course is for anyone that is looking to learn the Bootstrap framework or individuals that have a basic knowledge of HTML and CSS and want to take their skills further, or for individuals that want a refresher course on developing Bootstrap sites, even graphic designers that design templates in Photoshop and want to learn how to transfer those designs into working sites. Now normally a designer would need to pay someone to do that for them, but this course will show how easy it is to convert those designs into working, fully responsive landing pages. So let's dive straight in and take a look at the Photoshop file that we will be recreating in the Bootstrap framework, which we will do in the next lecture. Okay, so let's take a look at our Photoshop file that we will be recreating into a Bootstrap landing page. Now I've created this file so you can actually open it in any version of Photoshop. I've kept any photos or styles out of the file so you're not hindered if you're using an older version or if you're using Photoshop Elements, for example. So if you're used to seeing a nice tidy selection of layers, and I hope you're not too disappointed seeing all those loose layers. But that's the actual reason why they are all listed like that, so everyone can access the layers and there aren't any issues with the older versions. Now I've got this template here from freebiesbug.com, which is a nice resource for templates in PSD format. And they also have a wide range available for a variety of different programs such as Illustrator and Sketch. So there are some nice options here for you to download and play with. I do recommend using the actual Photoshop file that we are going through in this lecture, but this does give some options if you do want to do something different or if you want to test or practice on templates when you've actually finished the course. So if we just move back to the Photoshop file, so here we can see that we have the navigation bar across the top with the logo inside. Then we have these navigation options along the top as well. And it also incorporates a transparent background, so it blends into the background header. Then under the navigation we have a nice hero section that contains the main background image and also some header text or introduction text along with a call to action button. Now here we can see that it's meant to sit inside a carousel as we have these three indicators along the bottom of the hero section. So we can assume that each title will be scrolling along the background as the page is being viewed. Again, you can have whatever information you want in here. You don't have to have the button, or you could have more than one button. You could just have one line of text or no text at all. It's entirely up to your specific requirements. Then we have the About section that includes some of the main features or benefits of the app. And again, when we get to creating the site, you can have whichever benefits you like into this section, either for your business or the product that you are selling. Then we move on to the Design section, which has a generic screenshot. Obviously there's nothing in this one, but you can obviously add your own app screenshot or your own product images. And I'll show you a great resource for creating screenshots as we work our way through the lectures. Then next we move on to the Community section. So this looks like it gives examples of the type of images that their users are using, with a couple of examples here. Then next up is the Sign Up section. So next is the Sign Up section, again with a nice large background image and a sign up form. Now we'll add the sign up form in here, but we won't actually be linking it to anything because this is just an example page. But you could actually easily have it linked up to a service such as MailChimp or something similar. Then we get down to the Download section, which has a description and a nice couple of call to action buttons. Then at the very bottom we have a simple footer with some credits and the logo. So you can actually see that this page is nice and clean. It certainly looks professional, ideal for all sorts of uses such as a portfolio, an app landing page, or a new product or service launch page. So there's a variety of things that you could use it for. And of course when we work through our lectures you'll soon see how easy it is to develop a Photoshop theme into a Bootstrap landing page. But now we're actually going to move on and take a look at the Bootstrap model and find out a little bit more about it within the next lectures. Okay, so being as though we will be building our landing page in Bootstrap, it's probably best just to take a minute or two to look at what Bootstrap is and how I'll be using it. So if you've got a solid understanding of Bootstrap or you have an idea of what it is, then you can obviously feel free to skip these next couple of lectures, but if you're new to the Bootstrap model then it's probably ideal to go through these. So Bootstrap is a free open source framework that is primarily used for creating websites, landing pages or even web apps using HTML, CSS and JavaScript. If we take a quick look around the Bootstrap website, which is located at getbootstrap.com, here we can see that Bootstrap is described as the most popular HTML, CSS and JavaScript framework for developing responsive, mobile-first products on the web. Now, Bootstrap will easily and effectively scale your website with just a single code base, which means you don't need to create different code or sets of files for different devices. Bootstrap will actually scale and show your pages correctly on all devices, from phones, tablets, laptops or desktops, with the use of CSS media queries, which we will take a closer look at shortly. But Bootstrap is actually becoming more and more popular, and you'll be able to pick out which sites use Bootstrap the more you use it and the more you become familiar with how it works. Especially as there are currently millions of websites built on the framework, as people realize how important it is to have a site that renders correctly on all devices with just a single set of code. So that's a quick overview of what Bootstrap is, and next we'll move on to have a look at the components and how Bootstrap can be used. Okay, so we just quickly went through the basic understanding of what Bootstrap is, and now we can actually look at what Bootstrap is built with and how we can use them. So if you go ahead and click on the Components tab within the Get Bootstrap website, here it states that there are over a dozen reusable components built to provide iconography, drop-downs, input groups, navigation, alerts and much more. And if we actually look on the right hand side of the page here, we can see a list of basic default components that Bootstrap uses and how you can actually use them in your code. So if we start at the drop-down section, for example, if you just click on that, here we can see how to implement a drop-down into our page, and we can actually see an example of the drop-down and the code we need to use to actually create it. So if you had a basic page setup, all you need to do is copy and paste this code in and you'll have a nice drop-down feature added to your page. Obviously, if you just copy and paste components from this section into your page, it wouldn't look great and you wouldn't learn a great deal. This is actually a good resource for ideas and examples of what you can actually create and build on with Bootstrap. So if we just look at some examples here, we can see how to create button groups, it gives the code here, how to create input groups, so for example a username or an email. Then we can look at the nav bars, which we'll be creating shortly as well. Then we've got badges, a jumbotron which can be used in headers, thumbnails which have their highlight options as well, and alerts. So there is actually a great deal on this page, and it's a great starting block for any newcomers to Bootstrap. And it's actually worth bookmarking this page for future use, as it's great for coming back and looking out for ideas and getting tips of how you can add features into your website. But next what we're going to do is actually move on to look at the famous grid system that Bootstrap is built on. Okay, so the actual Bootstrap framework is built on a grid system, which provides a quick and easy way to create a layout for your website or your landing page. It actually includes predefined grid classes for quickly making grid layouts for different types of devices such as smartphones, tablets, laptops and desktop devices. If you go ahead and click on the CSS section within the Bootstrap website and actually choose the grid system from the right hand side, this section actually includes the official description of the grid system. So you can see here it states Bootstrap includes a responsive, mobile-first fluid grid system that appropriately scales up to 12 columns as the device or the viewpoint size increases. Now there is a nice introduction section here that goes into more detail, and it's actually worth reading it at some point if you're not 100% sure how the grid works later on. But I'll not go through it now because that won't be very exciting, but it's just an idea to go through that at your own time. But if we scroll down to the grid options, we can actually look at how the grid system works on different devices. So in this table here we have our device information across the top and our different options down the left hand side. So we can see that on the extra small devices the grid is horizontal at all times, or collapsed shall we say, and it actually fills the width of the device until it hits a small device which is the width of 768 pixels or higher. So you can actually see that the small devices are actually shown as collapsed and have a container width of 750 pixels. So there will actually be some guttering down either side of the content, which almost acts as a border for the content. Then as the screen size increases, the container widths will increase as well. So here you can see the medium devices, or anything above 992 pixels, will have a container width of 970 pixels. And then the large devices, such as desktops or anything over 1200 pixels, the container width will actually be 1170 pixels. So this table also shows what class prefix you need to add to your code if you want to display content differently on each device. And also, just to mention, the number of columns will always be 12 unless you state it otherwise within your code. Now we'll actually be going through this as we create our landing page, but it's good to have a basic understanding of how the grid system sort of works so don't get completely lost as we work our way through the lectures. So if you just scroll down to this stacked example here, we can actually see how the columns work. So this one here is for a medium device, as you can see with the MD here. And this top row here has a class column of 1, and it actually has a total of 12 columns. So it will just display 12 separate columns along the entire row. If we added more than 12 into the grid down here, it would just slot it underneath these and it wouldn't actually look too good. And if we look at the next row, we can see that there are size classes of 8 and 4, which again totals up to 12 columns. However, the first section contains content that will fill 8 columns and the second will fill just 4 columns. Then the next row contains 3 size classes that are set to 4. So each bit of content will be displayed in sections that are 4 columns wide along the same row. Then finally in this example we can see that 2 sections have size classes of 6, so that will actually split the content into 2 sections as 6 goes into 12 2 times. Now there are more examples further down the page that will be worth having a look over at some point. However, we will be using the grid system a lot during the lecture, so you'll soon get a grasp of how it works and how to easily layout a page using Bootstrap. But before we move on, if we just go to the Bootstrap home page, we can actually see the grid in action here. So here we are using the large class as the page's full width. And if we just look at this section here, we can see that it uses a class of 4 on this content, as it is actually split into 3 sections. So there's 4 columns wide here, 4 here and 4 here, which of course makes up 12 columns. So if we bring the page in, we can actually see it snap into the medium and small classes, which are also set to 4, as the content is split into 3 sections. It's not actually until we hit the small devices which uses a full 12 columns and gives the content its own row. So that's the basic introduction of the grid system, but like I said, we will be covering it a lot during the course, so you'll soon get used to it and see how easy it is to actually use. But next we're going to have a look at the media queries and look at how they work within the Bootstrap framework. I can actually show you an example of the grid system with this code here. Now we have numbers 1 to 6, and on the large screen each number will take up 12 columns within the grid, so they will actually be stacked on top of each other, as it states here. Now on medium devices they will split into 2 sections, as we'll have a size class of 6, as 6 goes into 12 2 times. And on the small devices they will have 3 sections, as 4 goes into 12 3 times. And on the extra small devices they will actually be split into 6 columns, as 2 goes into 12 6 times. And now if I just show an example here. So here we have the large device, which is 12 columns wide. Then we hit the medium, it splits into 2 sections with a size class of 6. Then the small we have 3 because there was a size class of 4. Then the extra small device we have a size class of 2, so that splits it into 6 different sections. So if I wanted to put 1 and 2 in the same row on a large screen, all I need to do is change this 12 here to a 6, and that should actually split them if I save that off and refresh the page. There you go. So hopefully that kind of all makes sense. I've attached this example to the lecture, so feel free to download it and have a play around with the grid and see how they work. But you'll soon get used to the grid system, like I said, as we work our way through the lectures. This is just a basic quick introduction, so it gives you an idea before we move on.